Welcome to the Neijiaquan podcast. This is episode 6. In this episode, Jess and I discuss the teachings of Kenichi Sawai, Bruce's teacher in the art of Taiki-ken in Japan. Then we talk about the scanning and feeling aspects of the standing practice in energy gates and how to awaken your body and sort of do the preparatory stuff for the actual standing and dissolving. Okay, hope you enjoy the show, and thanks for listening.
All right, so where we left off with opening the energy gates of your body, we were talking about the standing alignments that are part of the set and the importance of those. We were also looking at this biographical part here in the foreword, where Kumar's talking about the various different teachers he had over the years in Beijing. Then he talks about his early history in New York, some great stories there and adventures, and ends up going to Tokyo. And since we've been talking about his studies, we wanted to bring up a few things from some of the other teachers he had early in his career that were working on standing, where he was learning standing. And since you and I have both been way into standing over the years and enjoyed a lot, we wanted to look again at Kenichi Sawai, the teacher of standing in the park that he did for quite a bit. He talks about it in his books. He goes through the history of it, and he calls his martial art Taiki-ken. So here's a little quotation. The principle of chi, or as he calls it, the principle of ki, without which there could be no Taiki-ken, is not especially difficult. Though there are differences in its strengths, ki is found in everyone. Students of the martial arts attempt to train their ki to the point where, upon coming into contact with an opponent, they can give full manifestation of it. This is only as it should be, since there would be no meaning in training, no matter how assiduous, if the individual found himself incapable of bringing forth his ki at the moment of need. So, I mean, this speaks to the philosophy of this school where your energy or your output of strength is the entire purpose of standing. It's to make you strong and powerful, and if an opponent comes near, you give your full manifestation of your energy. So he uses the term ki to express that. I interpret that as you using your force to slam somebody if they try to attack you, basically.
Right. I think it's also the piece about intent, right? So, like, you know, the if you get down to the idea of chi is already in your body. You can't bring chi, you know, you can direct it, you can concentrate it, you can do things with it, you can even build it up, but what he's really talking about is intent, you know, is the mind and the ability to bring your whole being into, you know, your body, your mind, everything into what it is that you're doing. So, you know, that is the essence of Xing Yi, right? The Xing, body, and Yi, the mind, have to become one thing. And, you know, the whole piece of standing is that, as Bruce would say, you know, the gelling of those two pieces, the mind, the conscious mind, you know, that directs things, and the body that is directed by that conscious mind.
So, I mean, you know, we've been talking this whole time about the idea of, like, unifying the body. Like, standing is the way it all comes together. More than any other exercise, it really connects all the different parts of you and just creates this sort of unified whole, and I think that must be what he's talking about here.
Yeah.
He's using the phrase ki, but
right.
It's wholeness.
Yeah, and, you know, I mean, it's the jumping off point for all the other things that unify the body, like cloud hands and the swings and stuff. But,
right.
You know, without the standing, you don't have the awareness to do the other stuff, and I think that's...
Right.
You know,
I mean, because this paragraph is so telling, because he starts off by talking about the principle of ki, and then the next thing he talks about contacting an opponent, and then you know...
Yeah,
I mean, this is the martial arts of what's important about ki, and if you talk in, you know... People are often interested in energy or how that's translated in Chinese or whatever, but he thinks of it as a combat.
Right, and I think Bruce, you know, when he was teaching it back in the 90s or whatever, it was definitely more about, you know, an adjunct to your martial arts skill, you know, or,
right.
You know, that they're not even martial arts, that just life, you know, that the strength is, you know, a useful thing to have in life, whether it's against an opponent, you know, whether the opponent is like a human being or, you know, something you have to pick up and move, you know, it's still the same, you know, you're still using your body. So I think, you know, that martial arts is just a really good example of.
I guess what strikes me the most is this feeling of, chi can be so many different things. You can use it to describe so many different parts of life, and there's a medical context, but it's not just martial, it's also that sense of it's part of your everyday life. It's something you can express. If the individual found himself incapable of bringing forth his chi at the moment of need, this training, was useless, which is like, that's pretty cool, because that tells you chi is something you use and you feel and you experience. It's not
it goes
something fluffy out in outer space.
That pragmatic nature of Taoist practices, that it has to have some sort of usefulness.
Right.
The Zhuangzi idea of what is useful is that's another question, but the whole idea of it is that everything you do has to be in some sense useful.
Right. Like I want to keep harping on this because it's like chi can't be something that doesn't exist, that's sort of a fantasy in your mind. It's a sensation you're experiencing that's making you feel better, move better, be more resilient, be more unified. So it's like a descriptive term more than an actual thing, is my sense of how he's using it here.
Yeah, I mean, the question of quote unquote what is chi, I think isn't that one of the next pieces in the Energy Gates?
Yes, we'll be getting to that soon.
Yeah, so that's the whole discussion in terms of to keep it short. I think it has to do with layers, right? So you can talk about the chi of the mind, the chi of the body, the chi of the liver, the chi of a walnut. There are different kinds of chi. So when they talk about it in a martial sense, I think it's that sort of thing about your body, your mind, your everything being one piece.
Right. I think that's a characteristic of the opening the energy gates set, in the sense that the chi shouldn't be something you're pretending. The chi is something you're accessing and engaging with, and it's making your practice better in some way.
Right. It's already there. You just have to unlock it.
And that's not something you do as a click. It's something that happens over time to degrees. Yeah. It's not like I understand chi now. It's more like I understand it better than I did yesterday.
Well, the Bruce's analogy is the layers of an onion, right? That at each layer of the onion, you might feel like you've achieved a certain level of proficiency, right? And when you peel the next layer, it's kind of like you're starting over again and have to go through the whole process again to refine whatever particular thing you were doing. And that's why standing is, a never-ending process. You never get to the end of it, because you can always go a little bit deeper into your mind and feel your body a little bit more. So that's the sort of nice part about it. It doesn't have a defined end to it. It's just how much you choose to put into it.
It's a tool. It's part of your training. It's part of what makes you better in some way that you want to be. So I love the way he puts it as something that's a strength, and sort of squashes the idea that this has to be something up in your head. So just to finish this paragraph, check this out. There is no method for ensuring the ability to call upon the strength of ki, but standing Zen, as practiced by specialists in the martial arts in China, as employed in Neijiaquan and Taiki-ken, can develop a capability to do so. So he says the best way to call upon the strength of ki is standing Zen. Like, above all the other different ways, standing Zen.
Right, and this is a Japanese guy saying that about Chinese martial arts.
Right, which is quite a compliment, right?
Says a lot.
But I mean, I think that's, again, we've been talking about that. I feel like I've come to the conclusion that of all the different training we've done, it seems like the standing really sets the bar for how well you can do maybe in the other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Bruce has got, the two phrases, from posture to posture, the internal energy is unbroken.
Right.
And one part moves, all parts move, one part stops, all parts stop. And those both essentially go to that piece about if it's not integrated the way it was when you were standing, when you move, it's not, Xingyi or Tai Chi or internal arts. You've lost that piece.
It's almost as if your ability to achieve high things in, say, something like Tai Chi or Bagua, your standing practice is going to help set your overall unification level to make all the other stuff more fruitful.
Yeah.
I can see how the philosophy of opening your energy gates is affected by these teachings from Master Kenichi.
Well,
Sawai.
and it's also interesting to see how they're different. Essentially, it's the same. He had the same teacher as Wang Shujing and Han Qingyuan, right? All these guys that Bruce studied with, all came from this sort of martial standing tradition, and that piece of it was just a inherent, or like a fundamental piece of the whole training.
It seemed to have struck him
With all his teachers,
Yeah, I mean, he seemed to have made a big impression on him.
Which sort of then brings you, to Liu Hongzhi, which is a whole discussion of its
Right.
own, but,
Maybe that's next episode.
Yeah.
All right, so I'd like to continue down here just a little bit longer because I think some of this is so fundamental to energy gates.
Yeah.
When a person begins standing Zen, his mind is clouded with all kinds of thoughts. Soon, however, he will experience pain in his hands, feet, or hips. When this happens, all of his thoughts concentrate in the part of the body that hurts, and he is unable to think of anything else. That's pretty cool.
I mean...
So you start with clouded thoughts, and then you feel pain.
He's
That's the
describing
second thing.
literally everybody's,
Right.
experience the first time they stand,
I love it. Instead of it being this lofty thing, it's like first your thoughts get clouded, then it starts hurting.
Well, somewhere in that book, he says something to the effect of, when I first started standing, I didn't know why I was doing it, and I, asked my teacher, why do you do this? And he basically said, shut up and do it. And, that's what I tell my students now, that there is no answer to it. It's like you either have it or you don't, and it's like you'll know when you do.
So true. So just continuing from there, the pain figuratively removes the hurting part of the body from the realm of sense perception. As one continues to suffer discomfort of this kind for a period of years, one cultivates the ability to derive great refreshment from standing Zen. Before one is aware of it, the power of ki begins to grow to maturity.
I mean, I think essentially that's the ice to water part, right? That you start off rigid and everything is pain and sensation, and then as you relax into it, it becomes more just you enjoy it. You I don't know if it ever becomes easy, but it becomes not a struggle. AKA the 70% rule, right?
And I love how he says, before one is aware of it, the power of ki begins to grow to maturity. And that speaks to how standing builds on itself. You might feel like crap one day doing it, and you do it anyways. Then you feel good one day and you do it, but it builds on itself until you become way more comfortable, and then that feeling of ki, of chi.
I mean, I think everybody's had the experience of, not feeling great, not wanting to go to class, but you suck it up, you go to class anyway, and you stand for an hour, and at the end of that hour, you feel way better than you did when you got there, and you think, I'm really glad I came to class. And,
He calls it refreshment.
Right, so that's, I think that's the piece about just it rejuvenating your body and giving you a little bit more pep.
Right. Yeah, I mean, these are pretty classic stanzas here. All right, so one last thing. I suffered when I practiced standing Zen with my teacher, Wang Shangzai, and wonder what good such practice would ever do to me. When I felt this way, Wang would tell me, even if I explain it to you hundreds of times, you will not understand ki. It is something that you must experience yourself.
Yeah, so that's the one. All right.
So moving on in the book to lesson 2, scan your energy body. So we worked on the alignment so far. Now we move on to the next
It's
lesson.
interesting that he says scan your energy body, not just scan your body. But anyways, go on.
Yeah. Slowly observe any energy imbalances in your body. While standing in the posture described in lesson 1, scan your body internally from top to bottom. Beginning at the top of your head, start to notice places in your body where you feel any tension, strength, discomfort, or anything else that doesn't quite feel right.
The mantra.
Same old mantra.
There it is.
I mean, and that says it all right there. You scan your body internally from top to bottom.
Noticing the first one is strength, right? He's talking about that sense of being,
Tense.
But that's the sense of feeling strong is the first thing you try to, acknowledge at least. I just find it interesting.
Then the second being, the first is tension.
Yeah.
Second is strength.
But those,
Yeah, it's hard to tell the difference between those two.
Well, the tension is two things pulling against each other.
Okay.
Strength is one thing, just sort of being, dominant. That's the way he described it at one point.
Then next comes discomfort, so that would include pain, I'd imagine.
Yeah, that's the easiest
That's
one. That's the 70% one, right? That's the piece about, are you comfortable? That he started with in terms of, your stance should be comfortable. So now you're taking that sense of your comfortable stance and moving it into your, comfortable internal world,
And it's interesting, too, because we were just talking about Taiki-ken, and his thing is, you're experiencing pain when you start standing.
Right.
That's going to jump out at you right from the start.
It's basically the same thing, stand there and feel the pain.
And the blessing of pain is that it's the easiest thing to feel. So I think one of the commands in this is to feel inside your own body, and I think for a lot of people that can be hard at first. I know it was hard for me at first, but the one thing you're sure to feel is pain.
Right. I mean, the pain is by no means the only thing you want to feel, but
right.
it's the one thing everybody can relate to as that's a feeling I know. When you start talking about what is strength, what is weakness, what is tension, those things are a little more amorphous, but everybody has the sense of, I'm strong enough to pick something up, I'm not strong enough to pick up another thing. That's a pretty and so I think that's why it's first.
And then the last one is that anything that just doesn't quite feel right, and he always puts that one in there.
Yeah, well, that's the important one, right? Because that's where it's like you can't define the feeling, but it's just you can't put your finger on it, but it doesn't feel quite right. Those are the ones that often are indicators of something that could later become a problem, and so how you sort of, as a preventative thing, it's those ones that don't feel quite right, that haven't yet become pain, that you can, if you address it at that point, it's a little easier to manage.
And sometimes I like to think of that one as maybe a dark place. So like if you're feeling the inside of your body, if there's an area you can't feel, maybe it's numb, maybe it's dark, maybe you can't see that area.
Bruce used the term fog.
Fog.
It's like you hit like you're driving along a road, and all of a sudden you hit at night, and you hit a big foggy patch, and you can sort of vaguely tell where you are on the road, but you can't see much in front of you, and I think that's what that sense of not having an awareness yet is that sort of fogginess.
And reminds me of the clouded thoughts that come up when you start standing as well.
Yeah.
Clouds. So when you scan internally from top to bottom, that brings us to the top of the head.
Right. Well, I mean, it starts even above your head, right? I mean, the sense of awareness starts just a bit above your head, and as you come down to that point at the top of your head, that's kind of where it like kicks into gear,
So that byway spot at the top of your head is where you fall from above that. And so that point is, they call it the crown of the head, the tip of your head. That's right. Basically, it's the highest point on the top of your head. Some people have their head back a little bit, though. It might.
Right. I mean, if
you stretch yourself as tall as you can, and then sort of put your palm on the top of your head, you'll feel the peak of your head. That's a byway point.
Well, you can get close enough.
It doesn't have to be perfect.
You can look in a mirror if you need to. You can't if you're not sure.
Well, I'm just thinking of a lot of people over the years we've worked with, of like some have sort of a crane neck.
Well,
so they think that the top of their head is more forward than it actually
more back,
is.
Depending on which way their head tilts.
They lean forward, yeah.
I mean, so yeah, you just kind of have to, But the main thing is that if the head is centered and the chin is parallel to the floor, it'll pretty much be right above the spine, right? Like that line from the center of your head to your spine is what you're looking. So your head's over your shoulders and not to the side or anything like that.
So well balanced over your shoulders rather than leaning.
Yep.
So people could look in a mirror if there's no one around to like.
Yeah, I mean, ideally you don't look in a mirror. You have someone check you or whatever.
I mean, because a mirror may not tell you everything either, but yeah, it definitely can help you
in
make
the
sure
age
your
of cell
head's
phones,
straight.
you can just
take a picture.
Set up your cell phone and film yourself doing it for 10 seconds and, just look at your alignments from different angles. I mean, it's not the best.
That's an interesting idea.
Not the best way to do it, but it works,
Having a teacher to like correct you would probably be the idea.
Yeah, I mean, because there's all sorts of things about when you look at yourself, you tend to like have, different kinds of judgments and stuff. So, but yeah, it's an option.
And when we do this in class, a lot of times your partner will like put a hand on top of your head, and then you sort of let the top of your crown rise, so you can sort of like meet their
This is where
contact.
Bruce talks about the ding, right? The sense of not that you're lifting your head up, but there's this slight pressing upward of this crown of your head.
And so this scanning begins at that point. Why? I mean, whys probably don't matter that much, but I do think that there's some helpful reasons for why you would start at the top and then drop down.
Well, the simplest reason is that, the simplest reason is that because if you're trying, if your goal is to get your energy to start dropping, right? If you start at the top, it's a bit like an avalanche or something. As it gets down towards the bottom, which tends to be the harder part to feel, you've got more, juice behind it, right? So, that's always been my experience, is that, starting with the feet, leaving aside all the stuff about, it being not the safest way to do it, it's just harder, So you start with the stuff that, everybody can feel their head. It's, it's accessible.
It's true.
So head and hands are kind of like the things that you always use first because they can feel them.
Very good point. So he recommends that you feel from the top of your head all the way down. So you go through your body all the way down to the bottom of your feet. Continue this process below your feet if possible.
Right, so that's the same thing as you start a little bit above, you go down, you go a little bit below. So you're getting that whole range of the, as he calls it, the energy body. Because, as I said, it was interesting that he says energy body, not body.
Scan your energy body.
Because it does include...
You're technically...
Right, it does include that little bit above and below, so it's not just the physical.
What is the energy body? Or what space does it occupy?
Well, again, it has layers, right? So there are the 8 bodies that Bruce talks about that extend all the way out, as far as you can go. But the one, in terms of this stuff, is it goes from the Wei Qi, which is just that little bit above, where your skin is, to about, average about a foot away from your body.
So like a giant marshmallow man or Michelin man, sort of like...
Yeah, so, on a reasonably healthy person, the point above the head's maybe, 8 inches above the head or something like that. And same with the one below. But you can extend that sense of feeling beyond that. It's just,
So it's kind of the range of your warmth of your body, the range of your sensation, in a sense.
That's a good way to start with. It does have a very specific boundary, but that's not really a thing you deal with in energy gate, so it's not worth, spending a ton of time on.
Right.
When you get into spiraling energy body, then that's where you're going from that first boundary that's a foot away from you to maybe one that's 3 or 4 feet away from you. And now you have this much larger sense of, where your field is. And one of the things that people always say about Bruce is how he takes up a lot of space, not just physically, but energetically. And that's why. It's because his field is, he can expand and can, his field. And when you're not used to being around someone whose field is open, it is sometimes unsettling, sometimes pleasant, but people do have are affected by it.
So a reaction.
Yeah. There's stories about Wang Shujing, people warming their hands on them and stuff like that. That's that same field.
Some kind of field.
Yeah.
So continuing from there, he's clear that your awareness is what's more important than causing anything to happen at this point. You're just moving your awareness. So then he moves into helpful hints for awakening your chi. So that reveals what lesson 2 is all about. This is actually dealing with energy, which is just like in Taiki-ken. it's all about the ki. The standing process is about awakening your body's chi or ki. That's what I'm getting.
I think the key word there is awakening it, right? That it's something that's already there. You just have to, get it to come up, and to feel it. And, not that it's something that you're making happen or, forcing,
Right. It's not like you're building up your chi from 100 to 500 or something like that.
It's not some, magical thing. It's like it's just your own sense of awareness of your body leads to this thing that, the ancient guys called chi, but you can call it whatever you want, it just has to do with your ability to use your mind to contact your body and the resulting feelings that come from that, and leaving out any Chinese terms,
Sure.
It's
pretty raw, fundamental human experience. Yeah. It's not like some lofty thing that only the sages can fly through the clouds.
It's sometimes good to not think about these things in terms of these, I think sometimes it's good to think about these things not so much in terms of like metaphors and, fancy, analogies and stuff, but to just sort of try to relate it to what is the thing I'm trying to do with my body and my intent, because everything's going to come down to, you're either trying to do something with your mind, something with your body, or both, and just to sort of keep that clarity about which one you're in the moment using.
So the first of the helpful hints. Number 1, take your time.
Yeah.
Usually it will take from 15 minutes to an hour to accomplish what we call awakening the chi. So, I agree that a nice, at least 15 minutes of standing there, you can start to do more than you could if it was just 5 minutes.
Yeah, in an ideal world, sure, but again, do what you can. Don't set yourself up for failure and say if I can't do
15 minutes, I'm not going to do it.
Right, that's silly.
Internal scanning is a feeling, not a visualization exercise. In doing your internal review, you may not have directly felt your body, but merely visualized it.
Yeah, I think this is one of those things that over time in the beginning you may have to visualize, but one of the things that Bruce talked about is if you're going to visualize what it feels like to feel it. So have the visualization be about the feeling, not about the, a picture. But that's always been one of his big emphasis that a little bit of feeling is better than a lot of imagination. So if you can feel something even just a little bit and you can let your mind just settle with it, that's going to get you further, at least in this, than creating a bunch of pictures in your mind.
Fully comprehending the whole topic, but not being able to feel anything.
Yeah, it would be nice, I guess, on an intellectual level, but you wouldn't get much from it in terms of. He
speaks to that by saying you need to quote. You need to allow yourself to feel the actual state of your insides. So he emphasizes the term "allow yourself." So right. I think that speaks to what you're saying. There's really not something you can be forced. You can allow yourself. And that takes effort.
The hardest part.
That takes effort, right?
No, I think that's the hardest part, man. Is just getting your conscious mind, your if you will, your will out of it, and just letting that which is there be there and feel it.
That can be the hardest part of all.
It's by far.
But just like Kenichi Sawai said in the book, over time it slowly becomes
mature.
Yeah. And then it's refreshing.
Right. That's a good one for now.
Let's talk again soon.
Okay.
Hey, it's Isaac here again. Thanks for listening. Just a quick reminder to like and subscribe. And also, I'm going to be doing a Energy Gates workshop on the first swing on March 14th. So if you're interested in that, you can check out the website, www.watertradition.com. Thanks. Have a good one.